How you doing?
Great.
Yeah, I did talk to them.
Okay, great.
Just to be like, just, you know, don't get too heavy. So, all right. Just muted in the back. So just like always.
All right.
I'll let you know.
Alrighty.
What do you know? What's up, old man?
Hey, Matt. How are you?
Good.
Great. Oh. No. Do a real quick one. No, not really. I feel like it was a busy weekend, but not a busy day. How about you? Did you guys go somewhere?
Yeah, we were down Singapore.
Oh, nice.
We were down there. So
How was that experience?
it was good.
Going there and
Yeah, I'm just mask in the airport, mask on the plane. Once we get on there, the rules on the resort pretty much wear your mask at any area once you see it. Take it off. We had a test to come back. That was it.
what happened with the test of
I get quarantined down there for.
Somebody else paid for that?
Well, I meant for us to take the test and back the test, I was like saying, well,
Has it really been that long? Well, maybe we won't have a change.
Holy cats.
This way it might be okay, it's just gonna look weird, but it makes you feel better.
We just wonder about doing a little switch. Maybe we'll be outvoted.
Well,
Brady will be back in a
I
second.
feel like,
what's going on?
yeah, you just want to angle that? Just
Yeah.
like,
So
why would you do that to a guy?
I know.
We talked about like
You
maybe
didn't have it
doing a
here.
whole little
Yeah, I
angle, but
heard
then we gotta figure out,
Yeah.
you know, how we're gonna be.
Yo.
Is this
Hey,
too
you doing
late?
second last game?
Let's try it.
Oh, this is
It'll be
this
weird.
is my last? No, you have one more.
If you wanna do it,
No, I was done in March.
maybe try it before the next one.
Yeah.
You're gonna make this
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So usually we do the transition back in April.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we did
Okay.
talk about a
I'm fine
little
with
bit,
it.
but.
I have no problem.
No, because we talked about it, I'm like, no,
call the meeting to order. Its agenda, date, time, and location were properly announced. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thanks. We will start off with the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 21st, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Matt, is there a second? Rini, any questions or corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the payment of the bills. Is there a motion to approve the amount for February of $852,856.05?
So moved.
Chuck, is there a second? Chris, any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we have the cash summary.
I didn't get any questions, but as you can see, pretty standard for this time of year. The AGR, if you're looking at that, that's that class reduction grant that Sandy, that was that last month that we talked about AGR. And that's one of the funds that help us keep our class sizes K1, 2, and 3 at 18 or below. So, and it is something that is going to be sunsetting in the next year or two. We're hoping that they keep going forward with that.
Okay. Any questions? Alrighty. Donations.
Yes, again, Donors Choose have 3 projects that have been funded. Thank you to Mrs. Reed for Every Child an Artist for artist supplies and art supplies, things like that. Mrs. Schultz for classroom supplies, and Mrs. Utek for decodable textbooks, and then just all those little things that help make our individual classrooms even more engaging for our students.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Very nice donations. Next, we have comments from the public. Did anyone want to make a comment that did not get signed in tonight? Okay, so just so you're aware, on public comments, as it's not any of the topics that are discussed or brought to the board during public comments are not going to be commented on by the board because it's not an agenda item. But you are more than welcome to present whatever it is that you want to tell us about. Okay? So just so you know that we won't be reacting to your comments. All right? All right, so I have first on here, is it M. Franklin? For the mural, sorry. Are you gonna all go together? Okay, so then I had Kaylee B. And Justine, okay, and okay, that's the 3 of you. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Franklin, and I am the founder and elected president of our school's Gay Straight Alliance Club. With me today are Vice Presidents Kaylee Byer and Justine Karlsik. We're speaking to you today to discuss the procedures of our mural project. At the beginning of the school year, I went around the cafeteria with a clipboard, hoping that I could get at least 8 names to show support for the club that I wanted to start. 15 minutes later, I had 3 friends trailing behind me and over 30 names in just under 30 names of students documenting their support. After so long, I believe it is finally time for Random Lake High School to be able to openly show their support for the students that roam these halls 5 days every week. The continued discrimination of this sort of thing has clearly taken a toll on the students' relationships with their peers, friends, and family.
As a queer youth, I have seen the discrimination and I have experienced it. I have lost friends because of who I am and who I love. My friends have experienced horrible things, including, but sadly not limited to, being called slurs in the hallway, sometimes just for holding hands with friends. My friends have been verbally harassed and have been told to commit suicide. We've been referred to as freaks of nature, and our symbol of acceptance has been referred to as the fag flag. Perhaps the most disturbing of all, early in the year, our president was approached by another student. Harassing. The culmination of this hate can and has led to self-harm and suicidal intentions of the LGBTQ youth that has to face it. The suicide rates of queer adolescents are staggeringly high. To us, our mural is much more than just a controversial colors in a wall. It is a symbol of unity and safety at this school. Queer students coming and leaving will know that they will be safe and supported at our school.
So I've been here for like 10 years, 12 if you count kindergarten and 4K, but I don't know if I should count that.
Of course you count
It
that.
all
Yes,
counts.
it all counts.
I've never seen so many teachers come out and say, what happens, it's not okay that it didn't happen, and we're proud that you tried. Homophobia is something that's seeped into the school for ages, and it's never been stopped because no one tried. With this club, we've been able to garner recognition for the community that has had a place for ages, but has never been called upon unless it was in a discriminating, harassing way. The teachers were able to speak up about how they felt by posting messages on the walls, showing their discontent with what had happened and the way it affected us. There were little notes saying, love is universal, everyone matters, and inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. We want to feel like we belong at Random Lake.
For the first time in my 3 years at Random Lake, I witnessed teachers leave their classrooms just so they could try and give me and my friends hugs, just to provide physical comfort, knowing that the final push and the email that was sent out would have greatly upset so many of us. For the first time, I was approached by students I had only ever had one class with, and they were coming to me with, hey, I'm really sorry about what happened. By putting the brakes on our project, you allowed me to witness the most unplanned wave of unification among teachers, staff, and students that I've ever seen at Random Lake, or in Random Lake in general, which is exactly what our goal was and what we were trying to achieve. We would like to find another project or another image able to be accepted by all that will bring back the solidarity that we saw upon stopping.
That's awesome. What's the reaction?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Next we have Margaret Jinch's mural as a topic.
I wasn't able to put my thoughts together neatly. But the subject, since it came up, my attention from my daughter, who was who authorized this? Okay. You, as a board, represent us, the parents. Okay. I hope there is a change that authority comes when a request wants to be put on all of our walls. That's going to be seen by thousands of people that come to this building throughout the year. And I was researching this project and last night late this morning, and I came upon the color blue. Blue means peace. And I thought, how wonderful is this? Our walls are ribboned with blue throughout. And I think our school should be representing peace. Okay? And there's many groups out there that wave their flag, but they have an ideology that is not always looking for us as people, for our students, especially those students that their brains do not develop fully until they're about 22 years of age. And it's up to us to get them through to that age where they're mentally ready to be an adult and make some decisions. But we can't press upon them ideology. So my thought was, if you're gonna put something out there for the general public to see, it's gotta be approved by the board, which is representing us. And I sent a letter, and I haven't received the reply email, and I said it was forwarded. And I asked, where does this authority come from? And I have not received a reply, so I don't know who puts the authority out there to put things on our wall. But you could put a little ribbon up there somewhere and say, you, and I think that would represent us too.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you everyone for their comments. Mike will be speaking on
One of my updates.
one of your updates.
Yep, we'll
That's
be
right.
talking a little bit about
In the
some things.
informational section.
Yep.
All right. Next we have building reports. All right.
So just an FYI to the board that the window for our state exam, board exam, which is grades 3 through 8 in social studies for grade 10, opened the first Monday of spring break. So we are doing practice tests this week, and we will be doing formal tests next week for students in grades 3 through 8 social studies and 10. Also, the ACT Aspire for students in grades 9 and 10 starts next week as well. So it's just going to be testing for these for a little while. ACT days for the ACT testing day for the juniors was a success. There was only one person absent, and the test has been made up already, so we are good to go for that. Cannot believe this, but we are already in the start of the fourth quarter. The third quarter ended the Friday before break. The Excellence in Education Teacher Finalists. Random Lake was really lucky to get 5. Yeah, 5 because so we have 5 finalists in the first annual Excellence in Education Award, which is in the greater CESA 7 area. These finalists have been asked to write an essay in support of their candidacy for this award. And I believe the 15th of April is going to be the award ceremony next year. So a new award for us to.
Is that when they'll announce it at the ceremony? Is that what you're saying?
I believe the people who are going to be winning are going to know ahead of time.
Okay.
One other, well, Mike should be on that list as well, but one other person that we share with Sheboygan Falls, Lawrence, was also nominated and is in finals. Under strong culture, we have one more class.
Read across America.
Readathon?
Read across random last week.
Oh, I appreciate you adjusting for my elderliness. Read across random. Boy, I was even the one that put that on there. Oh, I got it. You know, the first day back from break, and this is a long day. Read across random is something that we hold annually. It is what we do in Read Across America. We put it in a week that works better for us. So the week before we left for spring break, we had dress up themes each one of the days. We had students lined up in the hallways reading. We had a book exchange. We had a blast. All right, now we go to Susan's notes. Student of the quarter in the high school and the middle school. The quarter 3 students were acknowledged and celebrated for their academic growth. Ramway Roundup in the high school, the kickoff for the start of the fourth quarter, had the focus of finishing strong. Probably out of order for up here, but I'll catch up. And the monthly assembly at the middle school, the April kickoff community service project, will be a walk for Ukraine as a fundraiser. That's on track here. Our PTO is had a family dance, and next week, Friday, is the family fun fair. Got an animal theme to it this year, and there will be food trucks, and there are still spots to sign up to volunteer. We have welcomed both generations and forward dentists in during the month of February and during the month of March because of scheduling as guest speakers to talk to our students about dental health, which was the month of February. And with some of the little bit older kids, they talk about what does it take to become a dentist, what subjects in school, how important is reading to the profession, things like that. So kids get a better idea of what it takes. Thank you to everybody who volunteered and spent that weekend here for Solo Ensemble. Our students did quite a nice job. And I know, speaking to Holly, who was here pretty much for the weekend, that it was very well attended, and the comments that we got back from our facilities on how it was organized were very good for us. So thank you to our entire legal department, Brandon, Nikki, Anna, everybody who put time in for Solo Ensemble. A week ago yesterday, no, 2 weeks ago yesterday, was the FFA Donkey basketball game. Gary, thank you very much for your outstanding pictures in the sounder. Great donkey control. Good ball pictures in the sounder. That's a really fun event. And finally, last but not least, I guess I should say, the National Honor Society is going to have a blood drive this week. We have blood, please come. Student acknowledgements. We've got forensic state qualifiers. Madison is going to be the 9th of April. Maria and Abby and Amy and Kingsley and Jolie. We have over 50 students qualified for the state solo and ensemble for middle school and high school. Again, absolutely wonderful event. A thank you to Maddie H, Lola, and Abby for being featured speakers for the middle school student of the quarter assemblies. We also have Big East Fall Conference awards for Torrin, Chase, Stone, Jackson, Brent, David, Diego, Sam, and Michael, and Jordan, pretty much the whole wrestling team. Abby for girls basketball, Matt for boys basketball, and for Kate for girls basketball. So I hope I did Susan justice with the notes that she left me, and will do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
And just so you know, one of the consequences of moving the board meeting from last week, Monday, over spring break to this is Susan had a cottage that she booked 2 years ago through this whole thing, and all of a sudden, like, hey, when we move this happened. So she apologizes for not being here, but thank you, Sandy, for doing a good job of standing in.
I suppose we could always email our questions, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Sandy. Board committee reports. Policy committee met just before this meeting, and we were looking at the physical education credits and the graduation credit as a middle school student, and we're going to revisit that next month again in committee, and hopefully have something to bring to the board. This was because of last month's public comments, so that's what we're doing. We're doing something. And then that takes us into the facilities needs and potential referendum for fall of 2022.
So Lee, you going to help Matt get hooked up here?
Yep.
Perfect. And as Matt's coming up here, Matt Wolfert, I know he was at one of our committee of the whole meetings, is here just to present the facilities audit that was done this summer and a plan that could address that. So those plans are the same as the last meeting. I just brought a few more if anybody didn't have any. And then this is an updated budget document, so I think you all want the first.
How do we do?
Anybody want the plans?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did collect them last
Yeah.
time, yeah.
All right, good evening. Thank you for that introduction, Mike. As Mike said, my name is Matt Wolfert with Bray Architects. I actually had the chance to grow up just down the road in Hingham. So for those of you, if I some crazy chance, you actually know where I'm from, which most people I meet don't actually understand Hingham. So it's great to be here in Random Lake. I'm going to walk through kind of the process we've used to date. Right now, the plan is really we're working towards sending a community survey out over the next 2 to 4 weeks. So this survey will land 8 pages long in every homeowner's mailbox. You'll have a summary of this information, the plans, the potential costs, the tax impacts. So this is just kind of the first time it's being shared this publicly, but it's been in the works for well over a year as our organization. So at Bray Architects, we focus mainly on K-12 school projects all over the region. So from here in Random Lake to Iowa to rural Minnesota and everything in between. We have 90 team members who do basically all K-12 work around the state and around the region. The first step in a process is what's called a facility condition assessment or study. So I'll kind of move through this document somewhat quickly. This has been shared now. It will be available, Mike, it's in your inbox. Yep. So this whole document is available to be included in the public communication this evening. But this document is really looking at the existing conditions and their existing building and site and the existing conditions. Before I get started, it's important to note that none of this and none of what we've found is born out of neglect or a lack of care or a lack of attention. The vast majority of this is typical with 99% of the schools that you would tour across the state and across the region. And most of it is just age-based. Things have simply worn out, no different than what we face in our homes, especially if we build a new home and suddenly the roof and the driveway and the furnace and the windows and everything starts to go at around the same time just because of age. Nobody's fault, it's just the reality of how schools are used and the age of some of the equipment. So the first piece of this we'll jump into is just taking a quick look at, there we go, your existing district. So we obviously are here in town, but we cover a large geographic area, right? We reach all directions, east, west, north, south, and really bring students in from all over the area, but we're serving everybody here on one campus. This is a little hard to see on your screen, it'll be a little more interesting. Your building has been added on to a lot, starting all the way back in 1959. So kind of this southeast corner of the school was built in roughly 1959 with the latest edition of the wrestling room in 2017. So every one of these phases, 1969, 1990, an unknown phase when the garage out back was built, 95, 2001. So a lot of different small to big additions and renovations have occurred over the years. Again, very normal for a campus and for a school of your type. But it's kind of an interesting graphic to look at just to see how many different parts and pieces it has taken to build your entire campus. For those of you local historians, if you do see a date that's wrong here, let us know, because we only have floor plans and old rolls of drawings to go from. So those of you that were here when something was done, let us know. We'd love to get it updated and get it accurate.
Gary would be our guy for that, right?
This is our site. We obviously, this was when the track and the field were being constructed, so this is a little bit out of date. But in terms of the building and the parking, we obviously have just our land from Highway 144 down to the south. And then an existing floor plan. So we actually have an accurate depiction of the floor plan. This was put together through existing building plans and then also obviously with work on field verification. So the process that was used was our architectural team, plumbing engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and civil engineers have all been on site, toured the buildings, crawled around in some of the spaces that you never see as users, as students. You never see half the spaces that are essential to serving you every day. The pipes below the ground, the mechanical equipment up in the roofs and above the ceilings. And the summary of that is that in general, The building has some needs in those areas, but as I noted before, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing due to a lack of care, just aging equipment. And this is all kind of detailed out. I'm not going to go through every line item. We can be here all night, but this report has been presented to you now, and please feel free to spend time with it and ask any follow-up questions if you have them. Site observations. Anybody that's been around the site, especially our asphalt areas, just look out the window. They've just aged. And you'll see as you start to see some of the photography that's included in here of some of the aging infrastructure. Again, it's really just born out of age, drainage. It's time to take a longer and bigger look at the actual asphalt surfaces and some of our concrete surfaces. You've patched them, you've done the seal coating, you've done everything you can to kind of limp them along, which is normal. It's now time to take a bigger look and deal with some of the drainage challenges and cracking and deterioration that you're seeing all over the campus. So just a lot of photography to hopefully support the findings of the civil engineer. We also then architecturally toured the building and walked the exterior, and every one of these little locations with a number and a letter associated with them tie back to a description of a potential area of need. A lot of brick over the years, freezing and thawing. It's the joy of Wisconsin. Water gets in, it freezes, it pops. It just is part of building and owning buildings in this climate is dealing with those things. Again, nothing unusual here. It looks like a lot. It really isn't by comparison to many schools we go into. But the goal here is to document those findings so we have a good understanding as we go to the next step, which is talking about potential solutions, what areas would potentially need to be addressed. We also did an Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, assessment of the school to determine which areas of the building, if any, had needs. And I think the big positive here is that you generally are in a very good place. Again, you see a lot of little notes on here, but these are things that were all from original eras of construction when ADA didn't apply or changes have been made in ADA rules since the time of original construction. And honestly, many of them are related to doors and door access. There's a requirement for how many inches you have to have on each side of a door as you approach it. You can imagine if you're restricted to a wheelchair approaching a door, if you can't get close enough to it to operate it, you can't get in or out. That's what the vast majority of these are. There's a handful of other little things, but this is, again, relatively clean by comparison to many ADA reports that we would see for buildings of your age. We looked at roofs. That'll come up next. You should be really proud. A lot of your roofs were replaced in 2015. So generally we're in a very good place in terms of roofing. Can't say that for every district, so that's something you should be very proud of. We looked at exterior windows and doors. So every door, in this case, on the building, go all the way around the perimeter of your school, every door was identified. Trying to see if there's an example close. These are what's called an aluminum window. These handle our winter conditions well, especially when you put them in a door where you get salt along the bottom. They actually last a long time. We've got quite a few doors around the perimeter that are called hollow metal. They just begin to rust over time. Salt up against them. They actually are, when they're constructed, there's mortar that's got moisture inside of it that's poured inside, so they start to rot from the inside out. Again, nothing you can really do about it. It's just part of age. And so as you look at this report, you'll see photography and identifying windows and doors, but in general, you're in a pretty good spot there. Most of the doors are in good condition. There's a handful that need to be replaced, but nothing too significant there. Same exercise with windows. So again, I think as I noted, these are generally in okay shape. They're aluminum. They're cold at the moment, but that's normal in Wisconsin. And then we look at flooring. So this doesn't show well here, but there's all different colors. There's 8 or 10 different types of flooring identified, from carpeting to tile to concrete to what is believed to be older, what's called asbestos tile. Again, almost every school has some component of asbestos left in it. It's fine as long as it's encapsulated and not airborne, and there's a test done every year, and you aren't in that situation. But the reason we want to know where that is if we're going to go through and remodel the building, we need to make sure we're planning and budgeting for removing that asbestos when we're going through and doing that work. So summarizing floors. So that was a very quick summary of a full document that, again, will be shared publicly shortly here. But the goal with this is to get a good sense and pulse for where is the building in terms of physical condition. Overall, the building's in good structural condition. do we have needs? Yes, but they're not more or less, I would say, than most school districts throughout Wisconsin in terms of some of our major areas of need. So once we get through the needs assessment process and understanding what our current conditions are, we start to look at how do we address some of those needs that were identified, but also looking at the educational needs. What spaces are we lacking, if any? How can we better serve students in both the classroom, in our activities, in the arts, and athletics? Are there areas of need in terms of just student social spaces that are generally lacking in this building? You're either in a corridor or in a classroom. There's not a lot of those other kind of flexible, softer spaces for students to gather during the day, before school and after school. So this will be a little hard to see on this angle, but again, this is part of the public document. I'll try to describe generally. This site plan suggests basically a reconstruction of the front parking lots. Rebuilding, replacing the asphalt, changing the flow slightly. We would potentially have 2 drop-off loops in the front of the school. That assumes we can take our bus traffic to the back of the school. So in this hypothetical plan, all of our parent drop-off pickup would be concentrated in 2 loops on the front of the school, or on the east side, and all bus traffic would come to the back of the school. This does consider what it would look like if we could extend a private drive or road south to County Road II, which would give us another connection. You're in a bit of a unique situation where you have State Highway 144 and then just 2 generally in-town roads, 3 that serve you. Basically residential streets, not higher volume. So you can imagine that the pressure and strain it puts on the vast majority of traffic comes to this east side. Both buses and cars right now, so it creates a lot of congestion and potential challenge. So if this can be achieved, whereby we could bring our buses through from the south side of the property, across from County II, we could do bus drop-off in the back, parents in the front, really separating that traffic, and we think creating a much cleaner and safer drop-off and pickup sequence. You can imagine it would also be great when you have events that not everybody is going to 144, right? You're making your way all the way through town to 144 to come back to go to a game at the football field or to a game at the baseball diamond. This concept also then proposes a couple of minor additions to the building. One would be a multi-purpose room out front, so a cafeteria kitchen. We'll show you a little bit more of that when we get into the floor plan. Looks at connecting with some additional classrooms, like call it kind of the oldest original section in the high school corridor. It dead ends just down at the end here, and there's a small kind of U-shaped courtyard area, and then the new science labs and things are across. This would link those 2 hallways so that students in the high school wing of the school have complete ability to circulate around this entire wing. And then the road coming through does take out one of the existing, I'll say, maintenance and storage buildings on site, so this would just simply construct a new version of that out of the way from the new roadway coming through. So that's the conceptual site plan.
So Matt, before you go into the footprint of this, and I think, and actually go to the next one, that's fine, just to kind of lead into that next one as you explain. I think really the piece that through this audit and through conversations, it was, as a district, how do we do a couple of things? One, how do we look for even more safety? And you're going to hear about how we can get down to one entry point, bringing our offices together, our buses, truly separating them from our cars in the front. And then also, in a environment right now of declining enrollment, how can we do things more efficiently? So as you hear, a multi-purpose room with a new cafeteria. Right now, we have students that have lunch at 10:40 because we have to go with 3 different lunches. If we can go down and have 2 lunches, it can be more efficient. If we get down to a place of, we have 3 distinct elementary, middle, and high school office, we can do that with 1 centralized office and still do some of those same things. It helps us be more efficient and effective. So a lot of those were the key elements when creating this, what you're seeing in front of you here.
Thank you, Mike. So as we jump right in, we'll start at the front of the school. So as I noted on the site plan, this proposes an addition basically right out here that would include a multi-purpose cafeteria space. We would have a new kitchen and storage and receiving, so we'd be able to deliver food directly into the kitchen environment. Right now, we're kind of pulling it through the front doors and down the hall to get access to the kitchen. And then it would add a new secure entrance and reception area, which would be the single point of access to the school after the school day starts. So once school started, all the other doors around the perimeter would be locked, and all students, visitors, families, et cetera, would all come through one location, and then split off to our elementary, middle, and high school buildings from there. We would then remodel the existing office space, and that's really light remodeling, not major renovation, to kind of just tweak the flow of the existing office to better interact with what are 2 classrooms right now that we would relocate. So some minor renovations to the office area to do what Mike just noted, gain the efficiencies of a consolidated office where we have all of our staff together in one location. And then we'll get into some of the potential bigger moves. And I think it's important before we even get into this. This is a master plan. This is potentially not a single-phase project. If the community doesn't agree that we want to do it all at once, the goal would be that we could implement this in phases over time. But the hope of the master plan is you don't make a move today that prevents you from doing future things if the community in the future would want to do them. So it's no different than when you buy a home and you decide you want to remodel your bathroom and replace the roof and redo the basement, et cetera. You have a master plan. You've got a vision for all the things you want to do. And you want to make sure that whatever you do in the first phase doesn't prevent you from being able to do the second or third or fourth project that you may have in mind for down the road. No different at this. It's just a much bigger scale, as you can imagine. So this proposal would be, because we're building a new cafeteria, multi-purpose room for all of our students, the current cafeteria down the hall could become the library. So we would build a kindergarten through 8th grade library, basically centrally located for them, because most of our elementary and middle school kids are generally in that direction in the school already. When we take that library space away, that creates this space that we're in now could become our weight and fitness center. So we've got a small version of one right now. It's serving us. It's basically on the back side of the gymnasium. Not very accessible for our community members and for others that want to use it. So this would basically remodel the space we're in to become a new weight fitness center. Again, much easier for access, right? We have all of our parking here, and would become a very usable space for you. As we move down the hall, there's a series of classrooms and some student services guidance spaces just up the stairs and ramp, just outside the auditorium. We would remodel that and open that up to become a student collaboration and common space. So as I noted before, a lot of the things we're seeing for students are not just about, you're not learning just in classrooms. This building is basically hallways and classrooms. There's not a lot of those other soft social spaces, kids before school, after school, during study halls, etc. So this would not only serve as that space for students during the day, but it would also, it's directly adjacent to the auditorium with some intentionality that it basically becomes the auditorium lobby again. That's not why it's being built, but that position within the building works really well, that when there is an event in the auditorium, intermissions before, events after, we now get a lobby space that's more appropriately sized for the quality of the auditorium that you have. As we move down the main high school hallway, it's basically the original section of the school, and not a lot has been done to it since then. So really just looking at a refresh of those areas. Not moving a ton of walls, but new flooring, new lighting, new painting, opening up the windows a little bit more. They were closed up to be quite small back in the day. Cleaning up, we've got a soffit that's always a challenge. It's the vertical roof overhang is really always an issue. It's wood, it's peeling paint constantly. So we'd wrap that in aluminum and get it to where you don't have to maintain it as often. But the other piece then, as I noted in the site plan, is we would connect back across the courtyard. I don't know, kids can probably tell you it floods a lot already, and it's basically a bit of a pool at times. So it's not as though we wouldn't address that. We've got a good budget to address that challenge by putting in stormwater piping below the ground to get that water out. So we can, with confidence, connect this and not worry about that water issue because we'll handle it with below-grade improvements. Not much for proposed improvements in science, ag, and the shop spaces. Art and the auditorium, because they're great. It really served you well. The last project that you as a community invested in put a lot of work and improvements into those areas, so they're in a great place in terms of the condition they're in and the way they serve students and teachers today. As we move back further through the building, one proposal is the band program is doing great. You guys are really succeeding and performing at a high level. The numbers are growing in that area, and we have two challenges there. One, it's not an ADA compliant room, so it's got these built-in tiers. You can imagine without ramps, you can't access those if you have physical limitations. So we'd be flattening out that floor and making the band room larger. We'd be making it larger by growing it to the east to take over some existing office and practice room space. Choir vocal room would generally stay where it is, and then across the hall is an older locker room that gets used maybe for visitor, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe some visitor uses, but it's really not a primary locker room. It gets very little use right now. So the thought is to make much better use of that old locker room space by replacing the practice rooms that we're taking away, but then also creating what's called a green room and changing room in support of the auditorium. They don't have a great place right now to go to change during productions, to put on makeup during production, so this green room would become a great space for them to use, and really taking advantage of some slightly underutilized space within the school. As we move back down the hallway, we've got our current locker rooms. Again, they're good square footage wise, they serve us well, they're just not in the greatest condition, they've aged. Our training room isn't accessible overly well. We lack a lot of, this is throughout the building, I'll point it out here, and there's a bunch of different areas that we're adding and remodeling for. We lack locations for private bathroom facilities. So could be staff, could be students, could be an adult that comes to an event with a young child of the opposite gender and they don't want to go into a bathroom. So a variety of reasons. They're very important in terms of supporting your school. Those are peppered throughout. But we've actually created 2 small ones off the back hallway adjacent to a team room that would allow for showers and changing in a more private environment in a less structured locker room area. As I noted before, the current fitness center sits at the back of the gymnasium or the west side of the gym. That would simply be turned into storage. No school has enough storage for Phi-Ed and athletics, both indoor and outdoor. This position on the building is perfect. It's connected to our main gym. It also has direct access to the outside where our fields are. So really inexpensive move if we move the weight fitness center up to the front to make that happen. And then as we move all the way further through, really looking at 2 things. When we move the K-8 library to the current cafeteria area, we'd be turning the current library into a STEM center, or a science, technology, engineering, art, math area. That's all surrounded by classrooms. So you could think of a really innovative hands-on learning environment where students throughout the day are breaking out and working on projects, working with specialists, not in their classroom, but in an environment that's set up to support today's curriculum. And the other piece then, it doesn't show well on a plan, is we're going to remodel the majority of the bathrooms that haven't been remodeled to date. We're going to address some of our older classrooms in the elementary school that haven't been addressed, get the asbestos flooring out, put new flooring in, some new cabinetry, some new technology. I'm similar, if not identical, to this piece of technology, much better than an old projector like we used to put in classrooms. And again, not moving a ton of walls through here, more of just a refresh of some of the older sections of the school that haven't had a great deal of attention for 15, 20, maybe even 30 years at times. So that's a very quick overview. There's a lot in here. Board, any questions? I think most of you have seen this previously. Okay. Go ahead.
I have a question. If you take out the front, put this nice cafeteria / multi-purpose room on, it's really hard, when you come to like a wrestling meet here or like a music program or something with all the, such limited parking space already. Are we cutting into the parking lots or not?
We're actually not much because we've got all this drive area. You can look out this window right here. Look how wide this drive area is. And the other thing we'd likely are going to do, and the budget has planned for, is there's all this green space to the south here between the front of the building and where the drive starts. We're likely, the budget has included this, the plan just hasn't caught up. We're going to loop that drive back here, come more straight across and then down. That's going to free up the ability to add a bunch of parking back here. So any parking we do lose, and it should be minimal through here, will be made back and then some with some expanded parking in that location. Good question.
Are you going to talk more about the sports fields too?
Yeah, I can touch on that now, and I'll touch a little bit on the survey, what the survey will look like as well. So when the survey comes out, right now, and this isn't final, we still have some work to do on it, but right now we're thinking that the survey might be asking for 4 main questions. One is, does the community agree with a base plan, which in general is the majority of the work on the site and the building floor plan, as noted here. Takes a little while to catch up. It's coming. There it is. So a base question would be, do you support the improvements to the building and the majority of the site? That'd be one question. We then ask an additive question. Would you support as a community converting the current stadium surface from natural grass to synthetic turf? And if we do that, we could then consider if we would want to bring softball onto the campus or not. So this is suggesting that if we're able to put synthetic turf on the stadium, it could be used for more practices. We don't have the impacts of kind of killing all this grass because we overuse the natural grass surfaces and they can't be maintained appropriately. So that would give an option to the community to consider a softball field coming here. And then the third additive question would be, would you be interested in adding air conditioning across the entire school? Again, master plan, not suggesting these are all needed. It's really going to come through the community's voice in the survey process to determine whether you feel any or all of these projects are worth considering at this time.
And if I can add to that, I think that's a really important piece, is the community input in this. Is we did the audit, we know where we have some opportunities. From that, Matt and his team has created a concept of things we could do. Now, really, is this something that we want to do? And when we come back next month, we'll talk exactly what those survey questions are what we want to ask. And, if the survey comes back with a resounding no, we don't support, those are some things that we'll have to look at. When we have the survey, we'll really be able to talk about impact financially, what that budget would be, what that allows us to do. So we are at a place that we can hypothetically do much of this work with zero increase or very little increase to what we are for increase in taxes. So we're still really really drilling down to what that number is, and one of the big things we need to do between now and next month is to say, if we're to do this base plan, it would cost X for a $100,000 home. If we were to add the synthetic turf for soccer and football, it would cost X more. If we were to do air conditioning, it would be X more. So our community can really give us an input on, this is worth it, this isn't worth it, and be able to have that discussion. So this is really that first step in a multi-month discussion about this topic.
In that survey, is there room for people to express concerns with anything in it? Especially, I just wonder, looking at the sports fields in the back, I know we talked about how football and soccer would share the same field. I personally have big concerns about that because I've been at soccer games and there's games happening or practices happening at football, and we don't want to take away from any of our sports because we're trying to keep all those programs going. We have that new baseball diamond or softball in town here. So I don't know if parents or community members have concerns like that. Is there room in the survey to express that?
Each of the questions that we ask will have kind of an open-ended comments section along with it. So that will be part of it. We've already heard that a little bit. That's why draft 6 of the survey had the synthetic turf and the softball as a question. We heard that voice through Mike and others in the community. So we've now broken those into 2 separate questions to make sure we can get data and give the community the ability to provide feedback on those independent of each other. But that kind of feedback is very helpful because we haven't landed the plane on the survey yet, but you'll see a draft, I think, next month.
Next month, we plan to bring it back, and then it'll be our job to finalize that, so then we can go to the printer and get it sent out. So you're going to be the final say on what that survey is.
And if you could just talk about maybe a couple of key areas that you think need improvement now versus waiting in the future. Is it fair to say that nothing gets cheaper to fix it later on? It's always going to cost more if you wait. And
Yeah,
they're probably the most important things that need to be done to address, so the community is aware. Some things you can just let them go, but it's only going to get a lot worse.
No, that's a great point. And it's hard when we do these facility studies to say, something is going to last 2 more years or 5 more years. We all probably have a furnace in our home that we said, should have been gone 5 years ago, but it just keeps going and we just keep riding with it. But eventually you reach that point where you have a catastrophic event and you can't basically repair anymore. And now, especially when you're educating kids every day, you're in a position where you have to shut down school because our boiler went bad and we can't get a new one for 2 weeks or some crazy things like that. So we're trying to be a little proactive, to address some of those needs. What are some of the key areas? I guess I personally think your site is ready for a bigger look and some attention. It's probably not quite as apparent here, especially in the evening months. If you get to the back side of the school, especially between the tech ed shop area and some of the maintenance buildings, there's some pretty significant challenges with that asphalt. And as I noted before, it's not just, it's past the point of just touching up and patching. It really should be dug up, a base course patched and repaired, the gravel below it, and a new surface put down.
And I would say,
Just
yeah, I
about
mean,
time.
it's a lot of the not the glitz and glamour. It's plumbing, it's storm sewer, it's those things that, you know, if we're looking at our connections from here to the road, well, if we're gonna dig it up, that means it's a good time to look at the parking lot. So I think if you look at it logistically, this is a good time to do some of this, and a lot of the number that you'll see is into things that you're not even gonna notice a difference, because it's happening underneath the ground or underneath the building.
With our bathrooms, many, some of them have been dealt with, but many of our bathrooms have served us well, but it's time, right? We've got old plumbing fixtures, we've got some water lines to them that are aged and can go at any time. The bigger challenges are below grade stuff. We don't see our sanitary lines are shot. We've got a pretty bad section that gives you guys a problem a couple times a year, that you're constantly shutting down bathrooms, stopping usage, trying to figure out or it's flooding and bringing waste back up. So just things that have to be dealt with. I can't pinpoint kind of 2 or 3 that make up the majority of this project by any means. But there are a handful, I would say, that are critically important, as I noted. Plumbing, some electrical, not a ton of electrical.
40% of our
but some.
roofs, right? Was it about 30-40% of
Yeah.
our roofs somewhere
Yep.
in there? So
We also just have some basic exterior envelope, we would call it, windows, doors, masonry repair, especially if you head over to the elementary school and start to see some of those wing walls that come off. That was just part of the design at the time. They're brick and they're failing. They don't look like they've got a good foundation under them, so they move differently than the building, and brick just starts to fail. So those are the kind of things that, yeah, can you limp along? Sure. But eventually, you have to kind of take the big leap and make the major repair, so that you're not constantly dealing with it. Again, your other question, do things always go up? I've been doing this 25 years, all but 1 year. In my 25 years, things have gone up. It was the last recession. We had 1 year of deflation in construction pricing. But right now, we're seeing the opposite, the most severe increases in pricing that we've ever seen. So I would generally say yes, things are always going up in price.
I will say right now, you know, the things that we're talking about possibly moving forward to, some of these, there will not be a shovel in the ground for nearly 2 years, because we are doing our due diligence, we've taken our time. The soonest this would go out for a referendum question, if the survey would come back appropriate, or come back positively, would be November, which means then with design and all these other things, because construction costs are higher than they've ever been. You know, hopefully there's some leveling off with this as supply and demand and supply chain happens. But truly, in some of these cases, there won't be a shovel in the ground for a year and a half, almost, really 2 years from this spring would be a time where we'd be looking at additions. So it is really about looking forward and getting ahead of this.
Any other questions? And then the final pieces, and I handed them all. Yeah, go ahead.
Gary has a question.
Okay.
I lost track of what happened to the high school library.
Great question. So that's an interesting change. The high school libraries really are, look around now, this room probably would have been 60 or 70% books when we went to school. So we have fewer and fewer demand for books and resources. Not that you don't need them or don't want them, but they're not utilized as often. And so the plan right now is to keep the resources that are needed, so we can track circulation, how many of these books have been used, checked out on a regular basis, and still keep them likely in the library. But this collaboration commons is really going to become the high school quote-unquote library. It's just going to look and feel different than a library that we were used to when we went to school. We're not going to be in a room surrounded by books. It's just amazing how few books we need in a high school library anymore, because the resources they need, the 3 of them are researching right now on their phones what we went and searched on books for. So it's really important that we respond to how students are learning today, but not take books away. That is not the plan. It's just we're gonna do it differently and create spaces for students to engage with more regularly. Great question. I should have pointed that out. I appreciate it. All right, and then I'm not gonna go through this in great detail because there's 20 some odd pages here. But as Mike noted, they're draft and they're preliminary. So the budgets are in front of you this evening. I will kind of jump to the finish line, not because we don't want to go through detail. I'm happy to go through any specific line items that you are interested in reviewing. In the upper left-hand corner of your handout, you'll have page numbers. So, I got way ahead. Where is it? One more. So what we're considering, kind of the base plan right now, we'll say page 11 in the upper left-hand corner, and there's still some work to do refining this, is approximately $33.35 million. That's all of the work you saw in the plan, a bunch of the work you don't see, the stuff that was identified in the report for infrastructure needs, but that does not include the synthetic turf at the stadium, the softball field, or the adding air conditioning to the school. Now, some sections of the school are air conditioned. This would be getting the entire school air conditioned on a centralized chiller system, which is more efficient to operate and maintain.
Could you repeat that, what you said? What was not included? What, the 33 million?
There's 3 other pieces that are not included,
Okay.
and they're on the next pages, but I'll summarize. It's the synthetic turf on the stadium is not included in this number. The softball field construction is not included, and then adding air conditioning to the entire building.
Thank you.
No problem. And then those come on the next pages. So the next round of pages is the synthetic turf, estimated at approximately $1.6 million. The softball field, estimated at approximately $770,000. And then adding air conditioning, estimated at approximately $2.3 million. So this structure, that base project plus 3 additive projects is what we're thinking right now the survey could look like. Like the 33, round number, 33 million.
With that, we picked that because of the impact would be minimal. If it was, it would be just a very slight increase. We're trying to get in on that, but that's where, when we went down this process with how we prepaid our debt, how we've done some things, we are in a place that we can actually do it's a big number. I mean, honestly, when we started really looking at all the work that we've done financially to get here and say, well, we can be looking at north of a $30 million referendum and not increase taxes, and if it is very minimally, those are some things that we really use as the base plan. Some of those other things, would they be nice and great? If you were here this last, our ice cream social, it was one of the hottest days ever. Would air conditioning been nice? Is it worth $2 million? That's for our community to say, on things like that. And that's really how this has been crafted on what are some of those things we can talk about.
And I think if you look regionally, you're just slightly behind many of your other conference members, right? Cedar Grove actually has a proposal on the ballot next Tuesday, so they'll be voting on that on Tuesday. For something similar. They prepaid debt very similar to what you've done to create a situation where the community could potentially do a larger investment for minimal tax increase. Oostburg has done 2 rounds of this since the last time you guys have done a major project. Kohler is in the throes, they'll start construction on their latest referendum project within the next month here. Trying to think of others. Plymouth has obviously done a couple of rounds. Rocky, the very visible transformation of their main east elevation as you drive down 57. So it doesn't mean you should do anything, but hopefully it normalizes a little bit the conversation around facility improvements, because all of your competitors are having that same conversation if they haven't done it already.
All right, does anyone have any questions? Do you have anything else for us?
Nope, that was the plan for tonight.
Okay,
So
all right.
again, this is all public now. Mike has it. It'll go on the board record, and the next meeting of the board will be seeing the community survey. So school perceptions will be here to share the survey with you. If you're in agreement with that, we'll go to print. We will advertise within that survey a few listening sessions as well. So there will be opportunities during the survey window for community members and others to come in and learn more before they take the survey. But again, it'll be 8 pages long, it'll be informative, it'll describe our needs, what the solution is, and it'll give you not only cost, but the most important piece is that tax impact. How does it affect me as a taxpayer? That will be included in there as well.
So I will be setting some dates. Remember my first couple of years, I did coffee with the superintendent and find different places. So if any one of you want to sit with me, we'll find some times that we can sit and just invite the public to talk about it. There's a lot to this, and the best thing we can do is just get everybody's thoughts on it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, board, great to see you all again.
Thank you. All right. I'll put my glasses on, Sandy.
Just like you make it bigger.
Next, we have COVID-19 mitigation plan. Do we have to talk about that?
I have no updates on it. We are just moving forward, so that's my update on that.
Okay, it'll be nice when we can take that off. Okay, new staff. Mary Jo Mears, playground supervisor.
I just a little ad there, staffing has been an issue like it is for everyone right now. So we created a playground supervisor, come work for an hour or two, come play with the kids on the playground, which sounds nice in May, not as nice in February. And we thank Mary Jo for taking us up, but we have some of those opportunities available. I think it's $13 an hour. It's a great paying gig if anyone else is interested in playing with our kiddos at recess.
Okay. And co-curricular coaches, advisors, high school JV softball coach, Roger Jones, and middle school volleyball coach, Callie Struck. That's a change from previous, the middle school volleyball coach? Yes, Kim is saying, okay. Any questions on that? More notification, volunteers, high school baseball, Dylan Guildmeister? Okay, all right. And early college credit, start college now request for fall of 2022. Who's saying something about that?
Julie, you saying something?
Oh, there you are.
We have 11 applications for next semester, 8 in start college now, heavily emphasized in the medical terminology, a couple of needs of health professions, and a couple of nurse assistants. I am happy to say that I recently had a meeting with LTC K-12 relations person, and we are in the process of doing an application with our anatomy and physiology teacher to submit an application to be approved to teach transcripted credit medical terminology on campus. That will save us probably a few $1,000s every year when that gets approved. Our 3 early college credit applications are heavily focused on mathematics. We have a couple of calculus 2 applications, and then looking for some additional elective credit with a human trafficking class, an American ethnic minorities class, and a microeconomic analysis.
Great. Now, we won't have to vote on any of
Nope.
that in the future, it's just notification.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you. And we need to appoint a delegate to the WIA annual meeting. In the past, most recent past, it's been Mr. DeBrew. And there's a recommendation for Mr. Hildebrand to be our delegate. Is there a motion to approve? Matt, is there a second?
Second.
Brian, any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we're down to our informational items from Mike.
Yeah, so actually this morning I had breakfast with Devin Lemieux, and it was a really nice opportunity, just listening to what Julie, 11 students that are taking College Now classes, the number of credits that our students are graduating here with college credits, really trying to have our legislators look at, it's important to look at what our ACT scores are, what our graduation rates, and we've always done very well with that. But I think one of the things that really set us apart is how our students are actually being prepared for their future, and how can we have a report card that really looks at that. Because if you look at some of the great things our kiddos are doing, they are leading the state in leaving here with certifications. Mr. Wills has in our Microsoft, we have other districts looking like, how the heck are you doing what you're doing? And it's because our staff are doing some really incredible things. And I'd like to see a report card that not only talks about our ACT scores, but also talks about the great things that we're doing, because there is some fantastic things that the adults are helping set, but our kids are following and doing, and that's the really cool thing. So that was breakfast this morning. Is that gonna go fast? No, nothing goes fast. So, but that was my update for that. Lee, I wanna thank Lee. We had, one of the things, if you're at the village board meeting last, I think it was a couple weeks ago, the village is looking at trying to make us a gigabyte community. So they're actually taking out some money and trying to make sure that everyone in this area has access to high-speed internet. And one of the things with doing this process, we were able to help out the village by doing this while also connecting a second line through Bertram into our schools. So we've taken, the nice thing is it doesn't really cost us anything because it's E-rate and federal money, but we will have redundancy to our internet service by bringing a second line in, and it'll actually help a lot of our neighbors in this area because it helps drive the line in here. So just working with what the village is doing and trying to be that good community partner with that. So that's something we're doing. And then, the last thing, which I know a lot of us are here for, and I just wanted to give a date on our update on the symbol of unity. And I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I want to thank you guys for coming up and having the courage to speak, and thanking you for coming, because, really when this was presented, it was a few weeks, maybe a few months ago, about creating a symbol of unity. The thought was, how can we do something to celebrate unity? The last couple of years have been tough for a lot of our students, and I think there's a segment of our students that experience school differently, and I thought, what a nice time to start having that conversation around this unity. So, as you may have heard, and why a lot of us are here, the initial symbol that was identified was something that we found out very quickly that it was creating more division than it was unity, and that's not the goal that we want to do. We really want to have this conversation, and we want to make sure that there's not winners or losers, because we should be celebrating what we do here in Randall Lake. So really, I think you guys did a very nice job of outlining the pivot that we're doing, and we've asked this group to find a symbol around unity, find something, vet it with students. I've done some research myself. There's a lot of great things out there that can really celebrate what we're doing here as a district, and I'm excited about your work, and I want to see something come out of this, just like you said at the end, is that's what we need to do, is we need to find something that we all can be proud of, and that's what's going to come out of this. And it's really been a really good opportunity to see some of our, I'm always here talking about the rainbows and unicorns. That's part of my job, is talk about the great things that happen, but sometimes high school's a really tough time, middle school's a really tough time. How can we have some of these conversations and come out and be able to see that when it's all said and done, we're all human. We all want to be successful, and I think in some of the conversations, let's concentrate on the things positively that we can move forward. So the last step of the process will be this group, and hopefully many more students will come and present what the symbol is and how the symbol was put together. I'm not sure if it'll be next month or in a few months, but that'll be something we're moving forward with that. So this is a conversation that some of us could choose to ignore, and I think it's really nice that we're trying to do it in a positive way. So thank you for your work, and honestly, for everybody that's here, we want your input, because when we're all said and done, I want this to be a positive symbol that when you walk in, like, yes, that does represent me and everyone I know that comes around.
Okay, great. That's the end of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Brian, is there a second?
A second.
Rini? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Again, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We appreciate